series on my channel, if you haven't noticed, called Coffee and Cauldrons. And basically in Coffee and Cauldrons, all I do is I go over really personal stuff that has to do with the craft and my personal journey, and kind of explain some of the things and how do I arrive to some of the viewpoints that I hold. So grab a cup of coffee if you are so inclined, maybe tea, maybe something heavier if you're watching this later at night, or you're just feeling like partying, you go for it. And let's get on to it. So for this Coffee and Cauldron, I want to talk about boundaries, and specifically how a demon helped me set mine. This was prompted by the wonderful Random Witch, who did Be For Boundaries for her YouTube Pagan Challenge, and in it, she had mentioned she didn't want to work with demons because that crossed the line for her. She used to, but not anymore. It made her and both her guides uncomfortable. And it had me thinking of how actually working with a demon, having him pass my boundaries, and then me reaffirming them, really helped me set boundaries for everyone else that I invite now into my craft. First things first, for demons for me do not ever seem like evil entities or pure power entities in a way. They're much more instinctual beings for me. They're the baser level instincts that kind of like everyone in the animal kingdom has or possesses at some point. That instinct to survive, that instinct to fight back or to flight. Basically they're the things that are slightly more survival based, and these things keep us alive, and in some senses even can hold us back if they are overused or if they're underused. Like, we shouldn't forget our instincts entirely, and I think demons kind of embody that in whole, really. So I came into contact with a entity or spirit, didn't really know it was a demon at first, that was much more of survival and anger. And it was used because my boundaries got crossed, and I didn't even realize it was a boundary I had to put in place or anything like that, and suddenly I felt extremely vulnerable, extremely attacked, and I didn't feel like I could stand up for myself. I just froze. I didn't fight, I didn't flight, I didn't know what to do. And suddenly I came in contact with an entity that gave me the response that I needed to quote-unquote survive in that situation, which was anger. I needed anger, and I needed a strict feeling that it was not my fault, that how dare somebody cross a boundary with me, how dare someone go that far. In my head, I could hear this little voice going on and on and on about how dare they do that to you, how dare they, you should do awful things to them because they crossed that line. And while I could recognize it as being extreme in the sense, I still needed that voice to make me realize that, you know what, even if I don't want to go too far with something, it was definitely something that helped me check where, but you know what, that's not acceptable, ever, for you to do that. It's not acceptable for you to push that far. And I was working with this entity in spirit. He would kind of pop in and pop out to the point where sometimes I would feel him take over. The thought that would come into my head was so angry and so more than even what I was feeling at times, and I would feel it like being screamed at my loved ones or anyone who had offended me, or I would use my attention in many ways as a weapon when that would happen, where he would just suggest to me, yeah, no, let's cut them out entirely. Who needs to talk to them anymore? And I would cut so much faster than I would deem necessary today. And I would just withdraw my attention and go, no, sorry, you crossed the line. I don't want to deal with you anymore. You went too far. Fuck you. Like, and it was over things that weren't more miscommunications as opposed to someone intentfully to cross a boundary type of deal. Like, someone would just annoy me sometimes, and I would just, no, I'm not dealing with it anymore. I'm supposed to be looking at myself. I never looked at myself during this period of time. This entire period of time with me just whatever. And suddenly I got to the Cliffs of Moher. Me and my family went on a wonderful vacation to Ireland as a kind of celebratory. My parents were having a big anniversary for their marriages. My sister was graduating high school. I was graduating undergrad. And it was kind of like the thing that really got our family to sort of reconnect. We were all struggling through a lot of things at that time. And I know I had attacked my family a lot. I had put a lot of boundaries up, some that were necessary, some that were very much not necessary. And we went all the way to the Cliffs of Moher in Ireland. And if you don't know where the Cliffs of Moher are, there's these beautiful, gorgeous cliffs, but they're like a drop straight into the ocean. And actually, when you come up to the Cliffs of Moher, there's all of these signs that are saying, like, there's no rope or barrier from the exact edge, but there are these signs that say things like, are you feeling suicidal? Please call blah, blah, blah. And, like, that's it. That's the only warning. So if you were really thinking about it, like, and apparently the signs are there because people would jump all the time. And so me and my dad and my sister, my mother's staying way back because she don't like the heights or the scaries or the whatever. and I'm on the edge of the cliff, and I can suddenly just hear in my head this little voice saying, what if you jumped? Wouldn't that make your family feel just awful? I could tell it was the same type of voice that I was always reaching for, that I was always kind of going towards to hopefully get me to set boundaries, but suddenly it was pushing me to do something just to make someone feel bad and would have horrible effects for me. And it was the first time in a minute that I had what I would consider a slightly suicidal thought, where I was like, what if I jumped off this bridge? And it wasn't from a place of sadness with my life or a place of depression or any way, shape, or form. My life was actually going pretty good at the moment. I was about to graduate. I knew that I wanted to possibly go to San Francisco for grad school. There was a lot of really great things that kind of came up with it. And suddenly this thought, like, it came out of nowhere. It was just like one of those thoughts that you kind of have, you're kind of like, oh, whatever. And we all have these thoughts at times where they're kind of like violent and you kind of shrug them off and immediately go away. Like, people have these thoughts all the time, and that's a absolutely natural thing. I've gone to a bunch of different YouTube channels and things, and people talk about psychologists who say, like, yeah, these weird thoughts just pop into your head, more violent thoughts, like, those aren't random. It's just the brain kind of working in its weird way to say, like, what about this? And you're like, nope. That's weird. We're not doing that again. But this thought, as I'm just like traipsing across the cliffs of Moher, kept popping into my head. What if you jump? What if you jumped? Wouldn't they be sad? Wouldn't they feel awful? And it was just all out of spite. It was not out of depression. Wasn't out of feeling bad. It was just that I was there in this environment. It was all out of spite. It was a spiteful feeling. And I immediately had to check myself and go, whoa. That is way too fucking far, way unacceptable. And whatever this relationship is you now have crossed a boundary. Not doing it, no. So at the time, originally, I immediately wanted to scrub my relationship with this entity. I was like, nope, we're done. That's it. You pushed a line too far. How dare you? How dare you do this? How dare you ever put my life somewhat at risk by letting these types of feelings and thoughts consume me at a time where it made no sense for it to consume me. That's where I realized how out of myself it was. How much of a habit those spiteful thoughts had now become for my mental state. It was very, very not okay at that point. So I thought I was going to cut this boundary, that I was going to do it, that I was going to cut it violently. I had even like this deep meditation where I was strangling what I had envisioned this entity to look like in a physical form. And suddenly I stopped because I saw fear in this little creature's eyes, and I suddenly realized that this is not what I wanted to do. It wasn't the relationship. It was just merely the habit of those thoughts. That spitefulness, that consistent habit was something that I was kind of relying on like a crutch, instead of me coming up with my own boundaries and me deciding this is right, this is wrong. I was relying on this entity to kind of fill that space for me, and for it to look to me and say, this is what you do in this situation. This is what you do over and over and over again. And it was way too much of a crutch for me. So I decided that, okay, we're going to try something. And I'm going to sit down and I'm going to go into a meditation state and just go, hey, this ain't working. This is either going to be severed right here and now, or there's a new line that you're not going to cross, ever. And that is one of them. Spite all the time, not okay. Spite all the time that would lead me to harm myself, not okay. Nothing like that of that nature. We want good, productive, instinctive energies to push me forward, to help me to grow. And that's when I realized, and the demon was just like, yeah, okay, cool. Like, that was it. And I was like, okay, we'll see how this goes. And it was amazing how I had suddenly decided I'm not relying on this entity anymore for this. I'm not relying on spite to be my main thought process for things to happen, to really hit me and go forward with stuff. And from there, I suddenly realized where my relationships were worth everything. How much it was a guide, an aid, and also a level of equality. For the longest time, I saw this entity as having something I did not, as having access to something that I did not and would never have. And that wasn't really what I wanted to do. I didn't want to look at it as something that was lower than me. I didn't want something that was higher than me. We had to be equals entirely. And I realized that I had been taking, and on top of that, also not giving. But it's like, what can I give an entity? I'm new at these types of things. I don't know how to connect to things. What do I give to an entity? How does that work? And I realized that what I had gained by the amount of spite that I had used from this entity is confidence and self-reliance. That was exactly what I wanted to do, and I had it ever since I was young. I was able to, I call it a spiritual orgasm in a sense, which is basically where you contain, you tap into a feeling of joy, and then you have all this joy right in the middle of your chest, and you can like feel it like fill you up, and then it just kind of like radiates out, and your whole body kind of like shivers and just gets all excited, and you just feel so much joy within this moment. You can kind of conjure it out of nowhere, and everything feels electric, like everything's just, oh, vibing so right. And when I do that, I feel like I have all the potential and all the possibility in the world. I feel my own personal power radiate from the inside out, and I realize how much, if I can conjure that at any time, that it's unlimited, that I always have access to it. And I kind of wondered, and I inquired to the entity that I was working with, do you have access to this? Do you know that you probably also have access to a joy inside of you, ball of power, if you will, that allows you to kind of tap into multitudes of things? And I realized that this entity did not. They had no idea how to take a space of such joy and love for the moment and encapsulate that. So that's why I started teaching. I would go on deep meditative journeys where he would show me at a deeper level how to tap into really baser instinctual things at an exact moment I needed it, as opposed to freezing up or just kind of shutting down when I was in a stressful emotional state. And I showed him how to envelop or to grow or to expand outward from this place of joy and to conjure it at a more immediate basis, as opposed to kind of allowing it to just kind of come in or feel that glee randomly from when the universe so happens to grant you with something that is joyous or you stumble upon something that's amazing. And that relationship from there has grown exponentially. It is now a very much a give and a take, to the point that as we've grown and gone back and forth, that's why I decided to consecrate said spirit into a vessel. I have him on my altar. I post him on my Instagram probably on a frequent basis. It's a little raccoon skull that I have put him in. And he sits on my altar. He helps me grow. I still go on meditative journeys with him. I can still feel him at times, feel that like poking of going like, are you standing up for yourself? Are you doing this? And I have to go, yes, or no, I should. Thank you for the reminder type of deal. And I would classify him as a demon. He still is this very instinctual, spiteful little thing. But spite is helpful sometimes as a motivator. Spite is something that in a way is a showing of your own worth. You're gonna like, I'm gonna show you, I'm worth it. I am worthy of this. I have the ability to claim whatever it is you think I can't have. That's a very powerful tool, but you should never overuse it, and it should never be your main standpoint for what you think of things. And I never even had thought to myself that, hey, if I am calling upon something into my life to help me, to aid me, to grow in my spiritual journey, I should also be giving something back. And it doesn't have to necessarily be in an offering or in a, a stick of incense or something. Sometimes it's because you have something to teach them as well. And that is something that is extended onto my deities. I do not see the deities that I work with as someone as higher than me. I see them as someone equivalent to me, but that they have different skill sets that I have not yet learned, and that also I have a skill set that they have not yet learned. And that sharing of information, of knowledge, is really where I think it is most palpable. That is where you get the best out of human relationships, relationships with entities, relationships with whatever. If you're not sharing feeling, caring, emotion, and thought, and information as a whole, then really kind of what's the point? Like, it's supposed to be an exchange of that at all times. And because of that crossing of that boundary with that demon entity, I realized, oh, I haven't been sharing. I've been taking till such a point that all that taking has made all of the attributes that I'm taking from you now become more of who I am than I would like. And that's an attribute that I no longer need to have in such severity for the rest of my life. So that's just my thoughts on the lovely boundaries that I have. And this is the first Coffee and Cauldrons. So comment down below. Do you guys have a specific thing you worked with that was amazing for your spiritual journey? Is there an epiphany you realized with your relationships with entities that you were like, oh my god, yeah, no, that has shaped everything? Because I'm glad I didn't sever that tie with that demon. I'm glad that I have it still, and it's strong, and we are closer than ever. And it helps me to realize that, yeah, everything needs to be a balance, everything needs to be a give and take, and for that I'm only even more grateful sometimes for the experiences that I have. Anyway, I make new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.